everybody. Welcome to another edition of an IMG success story. Today we have a very special guest with us. My name is Amanda Wardle. I am the Director of Communications. I'm very excited to get started, so I'm going to throw it over to them to start their introduction.
Hi, everyone. My name is Joshua Fernandez. I just finished at St. George University, so I'm a US IMG. I'm from Los Angeles, California. And I matched into neurology at UC Riverside, California for my PGY1. It's a categorical. And yeah, I'm really excited about that.
That is really exciting. It's very competitive.
Yeah, it was really competitive. Like, once I really started breaking down the numbers, I used, I think it was Residency Explorer. It kind of gave me a breakdown of, how many interviews or applicants they get and the interviews they offer. And then it went down to just 4 slots. And, it's kind of nervous wracking, especially as a US IMG or even just an IMG in general. You hear so many things about how difficult it is, how you're kind of like, third in the pecking order behind US MD and DOs. So you kind of feel like you're already behind the race before it's even started. But, one of the things that I, kept telling myself, it's like, what, every year it's a new set of applicants and you're not the same person that last year's cycle was. So I think it's really important, like the mindset that you have as when you go into these applications and obviously the interviews.
When did you start prepping your application? How did you kind of like get all of the information together of what you needed to get done and like organize your time efficiently?
So I was one of those applicants that did not know exactly what they wanted until kind of like the last minute. I had actually thought I wanted to do orthopedic surgery. When I first got into medical school, even clinicals, I played professional baseball. And so I think throughout the whole process, I kept getting told that, you look like a ortho bro. And I was like, okay, yeah, cool. I'll try since everyone's telling me I look like an ortho bro. And I was like, well, let me try surgery, make sure I like it. And I went into surgery. I hated it. It was just not for me. I thought I would love it because, I'm good with my hands, the dexterity. But it was just the time and the environment. And, everyone has that, that stigma of the surgery environment is 100% real. And if it's not something that you truly love, don't choose surgery. And so I went from surgery, then I went to anesthesiology. Then I realized I would have to deal with surgeons still. And I'm like, nope, can't do that. So then I thought about OBGYN, and my father-in-law is an OB. And he told me, he's like, it's just not conducive to have a family. He's like, it's very, very busy and time consuming. And so, again, another part of me is I have 2 children. I have a 3-year-old and a 1-year-old. So I was balancing, being a dad, a family man, and then also, giving my all during medical school. So, there is some things that I think that I learned that I would like other applicants to, think about is don't worry about the prestigeness of a specialty. Don't worry about how cool it will look to say I matched that, plastic surgery in Harvard, but then you have like a family and 2 kids at home. Like you'll never see them. So you have to really balance of what it is that you truly want in life and what you want to do outside of medicine. And so for me I want to spend time with my kids. I want to see my wife. I want to see my family and friends. I want to go to my kids' little league games. So I really take a step back and go like, okay, what do I love and what do I like and what do I just like to rotate in? And so I kind of broke that down, and I eventually ended up at neurology. It was actually in August. I was prepping to do my radiology elective because I thought I wanted to do radiology for that moment. I had did some outpatient and realized that outpatient and inpatient radiology are 2 very different animals. Their outpatient radiology is a lot more hands-on, a lot more interaction. You're going up and down the office, you're doing esophagograms, you're doing MRIs, you're doing CTs, you're actually having conversations with the parent or, with the patients. Then when I did my elective for inpatient, I was just alone in a dark room. There was no interaction. Once in a while, the radiologist will come in, like, kind of covering his face in the light. He's like, hey, do you want a break? I'm like, I think I want to go home. Like, this is just not for me. And so during that moment, one of my attendees during my internal medicine, I rotated, for us at least, I know it's different for US and DOs, we have 12 weeks of internal medicine. And so it's 6 weeks of just IM floors, and then 2 weeks cardio, 2 weeks ICU, and 2 weeks neuro. So during those 2 weeks, I met this neurologist. He reminded me of Antonio Banderas. So I always called him Dr. Zorro, and because his name was so Dr. Z, Dr. Zorro. So he loved it. He loved me blowing up his head, and he was just like, "What do you want to do with your life?" I'm like, "I don't know. I don't know what I want to do." I'm trying to figure this out. It's like I want to spend time with family. I also want to make a lot of money, but I also want to be happy. I was like, where do I find that balance? I was like, I feel like to make a lot of money, when you look at the breakdown of salaries, you're giving up a lot of your life for that. And I was like, are you really making a lot of money if you're working 24/7?
Yeah.
The payoff just doesn't seem that, that great of a sacrifice. And so he's like, why don't you do neurology? I'm like, neurology? I was like, why would I do neurology? And he started laughing. He's like, well, I do neuro. I'm like, oh, that's funny. I was like, just because you do it. But then he broke it down for me. He started telling me about his life. And he's like, what time do I come to the hospital? He's like, I have a family. And then he kind of, it was a little more personal, but he showed me like his tax returns. And he's like, this is what I make based on this hospital, doing inpatient, doing outpatient. And then he called his buddy and had a conversation with him. He was a neuro ICU. And I was just surprised that, not only just their lifestyle, and their salary, but also how happy they were and the time that they had. And I also didn't realize that, one of the important things that students or applicants don't think about is the market in terms of, the supply and demand.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of neurologists. They're actually low on, just like primary care specialists, they're kind of low on it. And so when I broke that down and then really paying attention about it, it's like, I really enjoyed neuro during my med school, my first 2 years. And I realized it was difficult. And for me as an athlete, I like difficult. I realized that in neurology, it's always, we still haven't learned everything about the brain. To me, it felt like it was still like the eighth wonder. We still don't know where personalities come from. We don't know why, if me and you have the stroke in the same location in the brain, why we both have different outcomes. Like there's still so many things. And then when you look at other specialties, they're like, I know it's this XYZ, and that's the end of it. In the brain, it's like, I think. And so to me, that was
for you. It's more engaging. It's like a mystery you want to solve more so.
Exactly. So they always talk about, the puzzle solving things for neurologists. And it really felt like that. And also, my mom has MS. And so it's like, that really gave me like, an incentive. It's like, I could really help out my mom. And then my mother-in-law had passed away from a glioblastoma. So there was just so much like neurology around it. I didn't really realize it. And so I took his advice. I applied to neurology with a backup in internal medicine, because I knew that in the end, if I end up in internal medicine, I have a lot of options. I was interested in GI because I got a love for it because my father during my medical career got large B-cell carcinoma of the stomach because he had H. pylori for so many years.
My Lord.
So I was like, so I got to see the GI, got to see how everything goes. I was like, my father lived, thankfully, but I got to see how GI worked. And I was like, this is great. I was like, this seems like something I'm interested in. And then also my mother and my wife are both oncology nurses. So I was like, I could do oncology. I was like, I've been around it my entire life. It is, most people are like, why would you do that? It's sad. And for me, it's like, I know oncology is sad, but it's like medicine in general, if you really took a step back, it's all sad. I mean, you're seeing people when they're sick, when they're not feeling well, there's not like a happy moments, initially in medicine. So I was like, it's kind of like how you make it. And for me, like, I love making people laugh. I love having conversations with them, kind of like, getting to know their life. And when I was in the oncology floors, shadowing my mom, it was really nice to see how my mom interacted, because my mom has a very similar outgoing personality like me, and just making them laugh, even though they just went through chemo, making jokes with them. They know some of these pathologies are not curable, but they want to talk to somebody. They want to know that they're human. They want to know that you can interact. And that's all patients want. They want to be heard, and they want to feel like they're just not a number in the system, like just checking off just to get a paycheck. And so once I really saw that, it really felt like I have an opportunity to help these patients.
Wow. So, okay. So you kind of had a background coming into it though. Like you had all of this around you, like so much health experience already. Some strange, I guess, like a lot of strange events as well. I guess.
It was tough. My story is very atypical and very interesting. And, that's why I want to share it, because I feel like people think that to make it as a doctor, you have to be the cookie cutter doctor or the applicant, have like a billion research experiences, you go to Africa and feed the children, you don't have to do all that. You just have to show that you have enthusiasm for the subject at hand, which is medicine or the specialty.
So once you decided to go though with neurology, like, did you change the way that you approached your application at all? Like, did you, make sure that you got some neurology LORs, maybe from, the friends that you talked to? Did you get any hands-on experience more so? Like how did that change your approach to the application?
Yeah, so I was very fortunate enough, again, in this journey where I think my big mouth kind of just a social butterfly. I got to meet a lot of people. So obviously I got the LOR from that neuro attendee that I had in IM. So that was nice. Then during my family medicine rotation, this doctor was super chill, very laid back. He took us all at the end to his house for a barbecue. And to put the cherry on top, it wasn't just a barbecue with just, us students rotating and him. He brought all his doctor friends. So we were all able to mingle and like ask questions. There was a cardiologist, there was a neuroradiologist, there was a orthopedic surgeon, there was a plastic surgeon. I'm like, whoa, it's like, felt like we were just like at a fair for like medicine. Yeah. And so during that time, there was this one guy, he was a neuroradiologist, and he was just chilling, watching TV. He wasn't even paying attention to us, and it was a baseball game. I played baseball. So I sat down next to him. I was like, you like baseball? He's like, I love baseball. He's like, you love baseball? I was like, I played professional. And then, we started like talking, and he's like, yeah, I'm a neuroradiologist. I have an outpatient clinic. He's like, why don't you come over? He's like, I'll, show you the ropes of neuroradiology. So I went and hung out with him every Monday for 10 months.
Holy mess.
And we
you really lucked out here. You really did luck out a bit. Like
we kicked it. We had breakfast and lunch. We did esophagrams. We did everything. I was able to help with assist with like breast biopsies, thyroid biopsies, kind of obviously not doing it, but just like, there to assist them.
Yeah.
And it was like really great. And I'm like, and he told me, he's like, you should do radiology. They make so much money. And I told him, I was like, dude, I can't sit in a dark room. I was like, I just did the like, he's like, yeah, he's like, that could be rough. He's like, but once you get out of it, I was like, doctor, I'm not going to do 5 years and wait it out. I was like, I'm getting too old.
You have your two kids. Like you can't.
And I have my 2 kids. It was very tempting though, because you could do, stuff from home, which is not as, prevalent in other specialties. But it's like, again, for my personality, I need to be having conversations with people.
Yeah.
So I got an LOR from him. And just keep in mind, and I want other applicants to know this too, neuro inpatient attendee that I first had and this neuroradiologist, they asked me to write the LOR. So I want you guys to know that it is normal to write your own LOR. And if you actually get really close with these attendees, they encourage you to write, because they're like, look, I know I'm going to write something that might be a little bit more generic just out of habit. He's like, you write and hype yourself up. I'll read it, make sure there's nothing too ridiculous. And they're like, we'll sign off on it. And so I did that, and they read it and they're like, yeah, this is great. This is what you did. This is what we, how you did. And you hyped yourself up really good. He's like, I agree 100%. So it's not like you're lying, because they do review it. They have to sign it. But, a lot of attendees are busy, and it's okay to write your own LOR. And I'm more than happy to send my example LORs to applicants, so that way they could, take a look at it. And so, and then my next 2, I actually got a LOR from the chief of staff at the hospital. She was an anesthesiologist, and I actually, became friends with her because I was in the ER, kind of just rotating for fun during my family medicine rotation. Like I said, my family medicine doc let us do whatever we wanted. He's like, if you don't want to do family medicine, tell me where you want to go. I'll hook you up with one of my doctor friends, so that way you could get exposure right now. He's like, I know as an IMG, you guys lack sometimes the support. So he's like, I'll support you. I'm like, this guy's super chill. And so I was in the ER, I just started talking to some scribe, laughed with him, kicked it with him. He was an aspiring med student. And at the end of like my rotation with family medicine, I went to go eat lunch with him. Didn't know anything about his life really, just like him personally, but not like his parents.
Yeah.
We go eat lunch. This doctor sits down, and I didn't know. I was like, oh hi. I was like, do we know you? And she's like, oh, you didn't introduce me. She's like, I'm doctor. I'm not sure how private this is. I don't want to like throw out names.
Yeah.
But she's like, she's like, I'm Dr. So-and-so, I'm the chief of staff here. And she's like, I'm his mom. I'm like, dude, you failed to mention that your mom is like the boss of this entire place. And then she looked at me and she's like, look, she's like, I want to thank you so much because, you know, my son has told me so much about you. And, you know, the fact that you were nice to him and you didn't talk down to him, you didn't think you were better than him. You talked to him like just a friend, just like an equal. She's like, because of that, if you need an LOR for anything, ask me. And I'm like, oh my God. I was like, well, good thing I'm just a social butterfly then, because I just made friends everywhere.
Really? That's so funny.
So that was nice. And so she wrote me an LOR there. And then my last LOR, actually, I all of these LORs just came out because I was, you know, adventurous. So during my surgery rotation, I found out, you know, obviously I didn't like surgery. And the surgeons were really mean. And I'm like, dude, I'm not going to deal with this stuff. I'm like, I'm just going to study for my shelf and, you know, kind of leave it at that. I did the basic surgeries that you should do, you know, the pancreas, the washouts, gallbladder. So I did everything that I hit. So at least I had that checklist off. I could make, you know, my the rotation grade happy. But during that time, I was, you know, wandering as I usually do in the hospital, and I ran into that neuro attendee. He's like, hey, they're doing an aneurysm where they're going to put in like a stent and kind of like, you know, block it off. It was a neuro IR. And I'm like, sure, never seen that, never heard of it. I'm like, let me try it. Went in there. Again, you know, shot the shit with a neuro attendee, neuro IR, just made friends and everything. And, you know, lo and behold, he was an SU graduate. And he's like, yeah, you know, I went here, blah, blah, blah. He's like, what do you want to do? I was like, I don't know. He's like, well, if you want me to write LOR for you, he's like, let me know. So when it came around and it was time for, you know, me trying to choose between, you know, radiology, internal medicine, neuro, he's like, come here. He's like, don't do radiology. He's like, you have way too much personality and you talk way too much. He's like, you're gonna piss off. He's like, you're gonna piss off all your radiology colleagues. He's like, do neurology. He's like, I'll write you a neuro IR. And then I didn't know at that time. He's like, I went to USC. You know, I did my residency in New York. I was a chief there. He's like, I know some people. He's like, my LR will go very well. He's like, I know we haven't known each other that long, but he's like, I like the fact that you worked hard and you know, ventured outside and not just like ventured to like leave, but ventured to look at other parts of medicine. So I was like, that was really nice. And so those were my 4 LORs. And so again, I don't think it was, some people, I've seen some Facebook blogs where they're like, oh, how do I get an elective or a rotation with so-and-so to get an LOR? You don't have to do that. You just need to be proactive, make connections, make friends. And most of the time, if you know, you guys connect with a personality, you could go into all these rotations and all these with these attendees and never have that on your record that you rotated with them, and you get amazing LORs. So I just want that to be, you know, well known that if you're creative, you could get the best LORs out there without actually having to rotate at a certain hospital or rotation.
What would you tell an IMG who maybe is like a little bit more nervous, isn't as like outspoken? Sometimes they're a little bit nervous to speak too much, you know, that kind of thing. What would you say to someone who's trying to make those connections to be able to get those LORs and that kind of experience?
So I think in those situations, you know, it becomes applicant dependent. And in terms of, you know, the ones that aren't as outgoing, it does not cost to be polite. And so when you go up to these attendees and just let them know that, hey, I'm looking for an LOR, really love your specialty. I'm hoping that maybe I could assist you or help you with some things. You know, when times get busy and crazy, I know there's a lot of things going on in the hospital and I know you're super busy. Is there something that I could help out with? And I guarantee you, most attendees will go like, hell yeah. I was like, I need you to do this or grab me this or whatever. And once they see that, you know, you're working hard, you're diligent, you're you know, sweet and compassionate, most of the time they will do it. I don't get me wrong. And I don't want everyone to know this. There are some attendees who are just mean people. And there's just no way around it. They don't like their job. They don't like their life. And, you know, one thing that I really learned during my 2 years of rotation is there's a lot of doctors that wish they weren't doctors. And I would stay away from those. Don't let them, you know, dictate how you feel about medicine. I think it's fairly obvious which doctors those are by the way they talk to you, talk to patients, even talk to colleagues. You know, it's really important how you pay attention how they talk to their nurses, their PAs, their NPs. You know, I had a surgeon who just went off on a nurse for asking a simple question. And I'm like, I'm never going to be that person. Like, it was just a mean, just beat down verbally for no reason. So those people, even if you're desperate for LOR, just avoid them. It's not worth it. So that's what I would do, is you'll just offer assistance and help. And like I said, most of the time they will say yes.
So you go through, you get your application out, you have interview season and your ranking. Want to tell me a little bit about what your interviews were like and how did that affect your ranking?
Yeah. So, you know, it was kind of pros and cons. You kind of wish you could show up at these places to really get a true feel of the location and the vibe inside, you know, the hospital. But then at the same time, if you're doing Zoom, you save so much money. So, you know, you got to pick and choose your battles. I really enjoyed the Zoom. I had one in-person interview, which, you know, thankfully wasn't too far from my house. And, you know, the difference was pretty big in terms of what you felt and what you saw. So in my in-person interview, can I say where it was at?
Yeah, you can say.
Yeah. So I had an in-person interview at Los Robles for Neurology, just in Thousand Oaks here in California. And it was great. Like, you know, you get to meet the coordinator in person. There's you know, a really good interaction between you two. You get to meet attendees. You get to meet, you know, nurses, PAs, even just people behind the scenes who are doing work. And you can really get a feel of like, if they love the place or if they don't love the place. Are they, you know, happy to walk out and go home? And, you know, are they trying to, you know, ask for PTO and a day off? So when I was there, I really enjoyed it. I'm like, so when I was trying to compare it to my Zoom calls, it was very difficult because I was like, I can't read certain, and, you know, on Zoom, people are like trying to do work at the same time while trying to talk to you. They're like, yeah, ask me questions. I'm writing notes. I'm like, you're not really there. But I was like, you know, you're trying your best, at least with the residents. The attendees, you know, were great. You know, at least for me, the interviews were a lot of fun. Every interview, every interview started off with, how did you go from professional baseball to medicine? And that was like the topic starter for everything. And by like the fifth time, I'm like, I know what you're going to ask me. And I just like, I think one interview, I just called it out. I'm like, you want to ask how I became, you know, a doctor? Yes. I was like, I know, I've been asked that quite a lot of times. And so, you know, one thing I was super nervous about going into the interviews because, you know, you just never know. It's your first time. You're trying to figure out what it is that they want to know. You know, in my mind, I'm like, please don't ask me about a neuro case because I don't know. The patient will die if you ask me. So I was like, let's have a conversation. But I realized that they just want to know who you are. And so I have a uncle who, you know, a step uncle who is an EM doctor. And he told me a very important thing. He's like, he was on the board for EM residency when he was working, and he would ask residents certain questions and he would try to evaluate. He's like, the one thing I always evaluated was the 3 a.m. rule. And I'm like, what the hell is the 3 a.m. rule? He's like, can you stand this person at 3 a.m. on a Wednesday when it's just you two doing notes together? I'm like, what? He's like, yeah. He's like, these people are going to be your family for the next 3, 4, 5 years. He's like, you need to know if this person is going to make your life miserable, if it's going to, you know, are you going to be able to talk with them? Are you going to make joke with them? Are you going to be able to tell them secrets? Or is it just going to be straight work? He's like, I'm not going to hire somebody, you know, match somebody who's just straight work. He's like, I love to talk. I love to interact. I want to know how your date went. He's like, I want to know these things. He's like, so I look for applicants who were, you know, personable and who could show me that they were more than just medicine. So I went into my interviews with that in mind. And I tried, you know, in the end, you kind of you got to show them who you are, because if you also show a fake self just to hit a program, you will be miserable. And I think the algorithm does a really good job at placing you where you're supposed to be. And I say that personally because I had ranked certain programs in order that I thought I wanted. And I realized I was ranking them based on prestigeness and not based on how my interaction was. And I'm actually really glad where I ended up. And I'll be honest, I don't mind. I ranked Riverside number 4. And it wasn't because I didn't have a great interaction with them. I actually came home and told my wife, I was like, God, I had the best time with them. I like, we drew like, you know, brains, like we interacted, we played Jeopardy. You know, there was a second visit to that institution. And so there was just so much, it was so much fun. I had such a
Yeah.
great time. And I just told my wife, and I think this is something applicants should think about. I was like, they had so much fun. I was like, but they don't have a housing stipend. They don't have, I wasn't sure how the insurance works and sort of like if it's getting out of my paycheck. And so as someone with kids, that's important. And you live in California where, a bathroom costs like, $5,000, it's not cheap. And so my other program, am I able to say the programs? Yeah. USC, UCLA Harbor, UC Irvine, they all gave you a $10,000 housing stipend, which was very nice. I'm like, this helps so much. It's like comes out to almost like $800-900 a month extra, and we're residents, so we don't make a ton of money. But even then, like their salaries were at a much higher rate. And so overall, just in terms of what I got help-wise with my family, that was very tempting. And that is part of, when you rank, you're like, how is my life going to be affected by going to this program, this program, this program? And so I made, like I said, I'm glad where I ended up because everything turned out just great. But I had ranked, USC #1, UCLA 2, UC Irvine 3, because I'm like the housing stipend and the insurance was just great. They wasn't taking out your paycheck. I'm like, this looks really good. I was like, I could save up money to pay off my private loans, which was another factor. And so, but when I really look back on it, these programs, there was just no interaction. SC had this one with this one resident that I really got along with, and lo and behold, he was a St. George resident, so of course I got along with him. He was great, but I just noticed like everywhere else, these programs, they're known to be workhorse programs for a reason, and I could kind of just see the darkness under their eyes. Some of these residents are like, oh yeah, I don't really see my family too much. It was just not. It was just wasn't super excited. Even when I had these conversations with residents where they're like, oh yeah, get to know residents, email them, ask questions. Some of them were rude, some of them were just super short, some of them were just like, if you're not a hard worker, I don't want to work with that person. I'm like, Jesus. I'm like, everyone's a hard worker. Why are you being like this? I'm like, and I just realized some of these programs were just not happy people. And I'm a happy person and I want to be with happy people. And that interaction that I had with UC Riverside and even the program director, amazing. It just felt like family. And they were just so supportive. Even the emailing is like, I can't wait to see you. Like we would love to have you here. Reach out to me if you have any questions. Even the residents were like, oh yeah, this is great. Let's do this, let's do that. And I'm like, this is great. I'm like, the interaction was there. It felt like family. So when I matched there, I'm like, this is great. My goal is to be at least in my top 4, 100%. They're all UC programs. They're all California. It was very difficult to get into. It's like, if I end up in these top 4, I feel like I hit the jackpot. And I did. And I was able to be at a program where I felt wanted. And again, like that's one thing I want these, future applicants to go through is like, don't think about the prestige. It's really not worth it, And then, I heard some horror stories about these other programs that, I didn't match into. And I was like, I'm glad I didn't match there. It wasn't a fit for me. And I think you need to find the fit for you rather than, posting on Instagram, like I matched here, because you're actually losing out. You gave up a part of yourself for this deal, and that's just not worth it.
Yeah, no, that's good advice. I like that advice. That's a good idea. I think that it's a hard time, especially like when you see, I don't know if you've seen a lot, like when ranking season was going around, people were asking everyone, how should I rank these programs? Which order should I put it in? It's like,
I was one of those people.
Well, now you know though that it worked out for the best, and I'm happy for you for that. But I always tell people, go with your gut, go with somewhere that you're actually going to be happy seeing yourself going every day, being with those people every day. Because it is, I mean, it's time consuming. It's literally your future. It's a big deal. So
yeah, you're not even seeing your family as much. That becomes your family. So, it's a really big commitment and sacrifice. So you need to be at a place where, you could actually just be yourself. And I think that's what everyone forgets. Everyone thinks it's just residency, notes, patient, learn. But there's got to be downtime too, where you're just sitting with your colleagues and just having a conversation about life. And, you realize some of those places don't allow you to do that because they are very, hard workers, and all they care about is production, not about your mental health.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good. I like that. I like mental health. It's been a very important thing I've been talking about in all my videos, like all these success interviews I've been doing, that it's so important to take care of yourself. And there isn't always, you kind of have to carve out the time for yourself. Sometimes it seems like that, especially in residency, but
Yeah.
I think having a program that supports that is good. So wrapping up, I guess, like, what else would you tell other IMGs? Is there anything else that you want to add about your journey that you learned about yourself that you're like taking
Yeah.
into residency with you?
So, like I said, don't be the cookie cutter applicant. For me, I could do a really quick summary. It's like, I played professional baseball. That was a huge topic starter in all my interviews. And I think really big on applications. I did stand-up comedy, and, it allowed me to, talk with people, interact with people. That's why when I would go on interviews, I'm like, this is great. I get to talk about myself. This is going to be a great time. I was like, you're going to get to learn about me. I'm going to know about you. We're going to laugh. We're going to, make fun of things. And so every interview was just like, how much can I make them laugh? And so when I was there were some programs where, like, I know I'm funny. And there were some programs, like some of these PDs were just not laughing. I'm like, crickets. This is just not like, this is a real tough crowd. This is not my type of scenario. So I use that again as, not only just to check the vibe for myself, but it was something interesting on the application, because I do think they're becoming a little bit more holistic in terms of reviewing these applications. And I think, again, like, these are topic stars. When people said, oh my God, this guy did stand up, this guy did professional baseball, XYZ, like, he also got, good scores, XYZ. And like, I want to talk to this person. And so I think it's really good to get an overall view. So I did stand up. I'm an entrepreneur. I created my own fitness program where I train kids on the beach, where I do plyometrics, anaerobic, fast twitch muscle fibers, workouts.
It's a resume that I wouldn't expect.
I know, I got all kinds of things. And so for that, it's called ABS, so Athletic Building Specialist. And so I've, in 5 years, I've sent out 35 student athletes on scholarships across the country. I've helped them, whether it was football, basketball, baseball. Wow. And so I've improved. I love, like, getting text messages from my former athletes. They're like, dude, I just did Hell Week and it's nothing like your workout. They're like, your workouts still are the worst things I've ever had in my life. I'm like, you're welcome. I was like, see, all that throwing up and dying was totally worth it. My goal was to give back in a way that I didn't have that chance growing up. When I played professional baseball, even going through medicine, being the first in everything is difficult. You're the pioneer. You're the one that, you hit all the roadblocks, you hit all the bumps, and you fall so many times. And I really enjoy just giving back to these children, these kids, young adults who don't have guidance, who come from, underserved communities, and to be that, role model, to let them know, hey, I'm here to help you out. I could talk to you. I could, guide you. I could give you the advice. I could tell you things that I did wrong that I don't want you to do wrong. And so I think all that was
stand up for you. I'll perform at your wedding.
Laugh, I was like, if you have, a friend that's annoying you, I can work them out at the beach. They'll never walk again. I was like, this is great. So I think all that stuff adding on my application really was something very important to, catch the eye of these, program directors, because it is a competitive. I got a 223 step 1 and a 234 step 2. They're not horrible, but they're not great. They're just right there. They're like, hey, you know what? This guy passed. They're great. Let's see what else he's got. Exactly. But I was able to honor all of my shelf exams. So that was really nice. I excelled in that. So at least I showed them, like, there was improvement. My GPA was good. So I was just showing that I'm improving and I am able to organize as well. I'm not saying everyone have kids, but having kids prove to these program directors, like, wow, Josh is able to be a family man, be there as a father, and organize and be on top of his things, all throughout this whole process. Because I've seen people who, don't have kids, and I'm just like, how do you not just thrive in life? Because I was like, I have these two little creatures who do like a line of cocaine every morning, and I'm trying to study and they're just bouncing off the wall. Or I have, like, my little one behind me, like, I'm doing UWorld. He's like, B. I'm like, it's not B. And I click it. It's like, it's B. I was like, that was just a lucky guess. You have no idea what you're even talking about here. I was like, that's a STEMI. You have no idea what that is. I was like, but you're going to give me one. I was like, you need to go sit down and go watch your Coco Melon. So, but able to be able to show these program directors that you are capable of excelling in residency is really important, because it is about time management and organization. So if you show them parts of your application, doesn't have to be research, doesn't have to be, like I said, doing these cookie cutter activities, but you're like, hey, I held board meetings for, housing here, or I did real estate here, like just something that shows that you were able to balance is really good. I know, like, if I become a program director one day, I'm going to look for certain things. I'm like, can this person handle the stress and the time management that residency really requires? Because you go from being
spirit, while
and a
staying
good spirit,
positive.
It's about being stay positive, because I've even through my med school career and as a med student, like I just learned, like, wow, you're gonna fall and eat it all the time, but how you get back up and realize, like, I could do this. Quick story, my first exam in med school, I failed, and I was like, this might not be the thing for me. I was like, I might have to go back on the pole and start making some money, because this is just not working out for me. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to regroup. I'm going to set up my studies differently. And I never failed the exam after that. And it was just boom, boom, boom. And it was like a blessing in disguise, because it showed me that the way I was studying was not correct. But there's always time to recover and figure it out, only if you're honest with yourself. And I feel like, a lot of times students are not honest. They'll come up with excuses. I think it's best not to come up with an excuse. If you fail your step one, or you don't do well step one, or you failed a shelf exam, be honest. Just look in the mirror. It's like, did I give it my best? Did I study 100%? Did I do my U-work? Did I do notes? If there's a no somewhere in there, use that to improve the next time. Because I think, like I said, I met a lot of students, a lot of colleagues who always had an excuse for something. And I'm like, if you just accept it and swallow your pride and just say, you know what, I screwed up, you will be a better person and a better doctor because of it. Because no one in medicine knows everything. I love seeing these doctors who, you ask them a question, they're like, let me look it up. I'm like, let me look it up. I'm like, I wish I had that during my step one and step two to look up things. But no one remembers everything. It's about, if you study correctly, you know where to look. And that's the thing about medicine. Are you able to, narrow it down because you study so hard? You're like, I know it's in this area, let's break it down. I know it's in this area, let's break it down. And that's all medicine is. We're not God. We don't know everything, but we're able to do the best that we can with the information we have and narrow it down to a specific location or idea to help your patient out the best.
I feel like I got a lot of good information from you today, a lot of good stories. I think whoever watches this is half stand-up, half interview.
Yeah. humor goes along. Oh, just real quick, because I forgot to mention one thing. I did take a leave of absence in the middle, right before I started my clinicals, because of certain health issues in my family. And I've noticed there was a lot of questions on Reddit and for like IMGs about, leave of absences and the pandemic and how it's affected you and all that stuff. And will it hurt your application? It does not. So I took a leave of absence for about 7-8 months. So, my wife had a baby, and, during the pandemic, not being able to show off your baby, it could affect a woman's, feelings and hormones. So she had a little postpartum depression. And then my mother-in-law had glioblastoma. My father ended up with large B-cell carcinoma of the stomach. My mom had a few episodes of her MS exacerbations that ended up in the ER. So there was all this stuff going on, and they're like, oh yeah, step one is the most important exam of your life. I'm like, well, I can't study for it. I was like, this is literally impossible. And, it was brought up during my interviews. They're like, what happened to the leave of absence? Or why did you take a leave of absence? And, I felt like this was the best answer. Like, how can I take care of strangers if I can't even take care of the ones I love? Yeah. And so by taking that time off and really focusing on my family and just pushing step one off, not even thinking about it, just helping everyone get their stuff together, get them healthy, or at least put them in a position to, get healthy. Like I set up, my father doesn't speak English. He's been in this country forever. He just wants to speak Spanish. So he didn't understand the insurance policies. He didn't understand how things work. So I actually, redid his whole insurance and set up his entire chemo, took him to the best doctors. And of course, my mom and wife are oncology nurses. I'm like, you're going to where they are going. We went to Santa Monica and we set him up completely. And, by the time we set him up, he had actually moved on to stage 2. And so I'm so glad that I had intervened the time that I did, because,
Oh, wow.
One thing that I want to do as a doctor is help these underprivileged communities out, because I realized despite having all these connections in medicine and knowing what to do, it still was a lot of hoops of fire that I had to jump through to get my father there. And so I started thinking of all those families that don't have those connections, don't have the medical IQ, they pass away. And it's really sad that our health insurance, health community is really just poor. The healthcare system is really bad and doesn't help, people if they're not aware of that. And so I want to, be able to help educate
Be part of that. Yeah.
and help them, go through it. Because like I said, the fact that I could help my dad, but still almost missed that window, it's sad.
Yeah.
And someone loses their mother, their father, and I don't want that to happen to me. So, I did that leave of absence. I explained in my interviews. They didn't find a problem with that. They actually applauded me. They're like, thank you for being honest and for being there for your family, because now we know how you're going to treat your patients. And I think
That's great. I love that.
that's a
That's
really
great.
important thing. So if anyone has a leave of absence or had to take some time off, it's completely okay. It does not hurt your application. Even if a US or non-US IMG, it shows compassion, and you could clearly make that a strength. And I think the most important thing is turning all your weaknesses into strengths, whether it's if it really is a weakness or if it's just a weakness that looks like a red flag, but once you tell the story about it, you're like, this is probably the best thing that happened to you. So I just want applicants to, look for parts of their application that they think are weaknesses, and to take a really good look at it and maybe expand on it and explain.
Strength more. So great. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. Sorry, I got to get wrapping up a little bit. I have another interview.
I felt like this in all my interviews there. Everyone was just like, I think we need to go. We had a great time, but you talk a lot.
Great. It was a great interview. So your handle is on Instagram for people to find you. It's at Dr. Stark 17, right? Is that what it is? Awesome. So if you guys want to find him on Instagram, you can ask him some questions. And I believe you're going to be doing a takeover for us soon as well. So you'll be on the Match Resident Instagram soon. And thank you so much for joining me today. It was so much fun. I got so much good information, a lot of good stories. And I feel like I know you really well now.
We're best friends now. There we go. Thank you for having me, guys. I really appreciate it. And I hope to, keep helping the IMG community.